Love Parade is one of the biggest music festivals in Europe. A landmark of German popular culture, it has drawn millions of partygoers from around the world for over 2 decades. It's 2010, and the city of Duisburg is hosting the techno parade for the first time. Music trucks drive around the festival grounds, and some of Europe's top DJs are set to perform. Without a doubt, this is the party of a lifetime. Rivers of people are swarming toward the old freight station, where the free event is staged. At the main entrance, hundreds are waiting to get in. A cheerful crowd fills the main ramp leading toward the event area. However, with each minute, the crowd becomes larger and larger, causing the festive spirit to fade away slowly. Now, there are thousands of visitors tightly packed on the main ramp. Instead of joyful shouts, people start to scream and call for help. There's literally no room to breathe. The fun event turns into a horror scene, taking 21 young lives. It's a disaster no one expected to happen at a festival about love and joy. The Love Parade has caused controversy throughout its history. It started in 1989 as a parade of 150 people on the streets of West Berlin. 8 years later, it has become one of the largest parties in the world. 1 million festival goers danced on the Straße des 17. Juni in the center of the German capital. Despite this, as many people opposed the festival as there were attendees. Citizens and political parties were concerned about several issues that accompanied the Love Parade, such as environmental damage, illegal drug trafficking, and safety regulations. It was precisely because of the latter that the Senate of Berlin ultimately denied a permit to the event organizers. And so, in 2007, the Love Parade moved to the Ruhr area. The first host city was Essen, followed by Dortmund. In 2009, the Bochum Love Parade was canceled. Finally, in 2010, Duisburg hosted the event. Both love parades in Essen and Dortmund proved successful, with 1.2 million and 1.6 million visitors respectively, and the city of Duisburg wanted to be as successful. Being part of the European Capital of Culture campaign was more of a reason for it to host the event. The city's mayor, Adolf Sauerland, was determined to make the Love Parade the best ever, especially because of the forecast of 1.4 million visitors. The city's authorities' desire to organize the event at all costs was huge. One might even say exaggerated to the point that some crucial issues in the organization were overseen. First, there was a concern that the event site was inappropriate for so many people. The city and the Love Parade organizer, Loopevent GmbH, agreed to set the parade at the former freight station. With a total area of approximately 120,000 square yards, the site was too small to take 1.4 million visitors. To solve this issue, a compromise was made to limit the number of people on the site to 250,000. In addition, the entire area was fenced to meet the requirements of German safety regulations. The entry to the old freight station was more concerning than the relatively small area for the parade. The only way to arrive was via the tunneled Karl Lehr Street. In the middle of the tunnel, an opening led toward the main entrance, across the so-called main ramp. This ramp was supposed to take on all visitors arriving at the parade. The problem was that the same route, including a narrower side ramp west of the main ramp, also served as the exit route from the main event area. This was not the first time for Loopevent GmbH and its owner, Rainier Schaller, to organize the parade. To clear up doubts regarding the safety issues, they hired a crowd researcher who made a detailed study of an evacuation in case of danger. The calculations of the inflow and outflow of the visitors showed that the main ramp was suitable as an entry point. Bordered by high walls, it was 85 feet wide and 426 feet long. Its maximum flow would be approximately 115,000 visitors per hour. The most traffic was expected between 1,700 hours and 1,800 hours, with around 90,000 people arriving in the area and 55,000 people leaving. And yet, despite the plans and crowd expert studies, the parade somehow ended in a disaster. As it turned out, many critical factors were overseen by the organizers. So why did they fail to see the danger coming? On July 24, 2010, the day of the Love Parade, crowds of people poured into Duisburg with great expectations. However, things started to get complicated before the event even started. Namely, the festival gates were to be opened at 11 o'clock, but due to prolonged construction work in the central area, the opening was delayed by about an hour. Therefore, when the gates finally opened at noon, a large group of people was already waiting to get in. In about an hour, thousands of partygoers lined up from both sides of the tunnel. At 1400 hours, the festival began. Floats, decorated music trucks carrying DJs and dancers formed a parade along the route, not far from the main entrance. The idea was for them to draw the visitors to join the parade and continue walking along the route. In reality, they only obstructed those entering the main area, thus slowing down the inflow. The jam at the float's path caused the concentration of people at the main ramp to increase. Already at 1442 hours, the entire main ramp, almost up to the tunnel, was crowded. The number of people waiting there surpassed the capabilities of the crowd manager and event security. Unable to keep the constant flow of people in and out of the main area, they tried to get support from the police, but couldn't establish contact since they had no walkie-talkies or mobile phones. 1530 hours. The police officer in charge finally contacted the crowd manager, trying to coordinate the crowd control actions. The plan was to engage the so-called pushers, whose role was to help people go forward and release the pressure at the main ramp. At the same time, the police would close the access points until the crowd was reduced and form a cordon in the middle of the ramp to shield visitors. Unfortunately, the plan failed almost immediately, as the pushers could not move the people toward the central area. Down the tunnel, the incoming festival goers were threatening to overcome the access control points. Facing the threat of the main ramp getting further overcrowded, the police reacted by forming two cordons at the end of each tunnel to stop the inflow of visitors. At 1600, the inflow of visitors was stopped and the jam began to form in the tunnel. At 1612, the police began to form a third cordon in the middle of the ramp, practically leaving very few people in the area between three cordons. No one was allowed to go through, but the problem was that no one was allowed to leave the site either. What the police believed to be a solution only aggravated the situation. The crowd between the third cordon and the entrance gates didn't reduce. The visitors trying to enter the festival area collided with those who wanted to leave. The number of people arriving at the parade was so large that it was only a matter of time before the cordons would break. Inevitably, the one at the tunnel's eastern end collapsed at 1614, followed by the one at the western end at 1621. Suddenly, a torrent of people rushed toward the main ramp where the third cordon was still holding the people in place. As a result, nobody could move in or out of the area on either side of the third police cordon. Some people began climbing poles, traffic signs, and other structures to reach the main site above them. Finally, under the crowd's pressure, the police dissolved the third cordon, leaving those on the main ramp on their own. 1627. Some visitors discovered a way to get out of the main ramp by using a narrow staircase at the western wall, right above the tunnel opening. In a flash, crowd turbulence arose in the area. Everyone wanted to get hold of the stairs and climb up. As police officers noticed the commotion around them, they tried to take control of it, but they were not successful. At this point, the situation started to slide into irreversible disaster. People kept pouring in from the west end of the tunnel, making the crowding near the narrow staircases unbearable. When the police removed the fence in the tunnel to let the ambulance car pass, hundreds of attendees used the opportunity to rush toward the ramp. Even the police's announcement that the festival area was full and would not be accessible until the end of the day didn't change things. The police and security completely lost control of the crowd, who were resolute in entering the festival. It was left to the festival goers to get out of the deadly crowd turbulence. Witnesses recalled the scene as painful to watch. People pushed each other, some even trying to climb over others to reach the staircase. Some tried to save themselves by climbing the light poles and the crowd control manager's container. It was important to get above the crowd if one wanted to survive. There were dozens of people unconscious, their bodies held upright by the dense mass. Many were reaching their hands in the air screaming for help as they struggled to stay on their feet. Here and there, a person would simply disappear in the stirring crowd. There were so many people in a tight place that no one could gauge the scale of the disaster going on in front of their eyes. Not far from the main ramp, the parade's organizer, Rainier Schaller, was doing an interview describing the Duisburg Love Parade as a complete success. He wasn't aware that people were dying only a couple of hundred yards away from him. Emergency vehicles began arriving at the scene as dozens of people lay on the floor with no signs of life. At 17:02, the first fatalities were reported on the ramp. On the staircase, people were still pushing up toward the main festival area, with many falling on others' heads. Realizing that it provided the only exit from the ramp and out of the crowd, the police tried to organize the people and limit the number of those climbing the stairs. The density at the ramp did reduce, but the situation was still critical. All over the place, desperate cries for help rang out. It was only at 17:16 that the situation at the ramp cleared up, exposing the victims lying unconscious as others tried to resuscitate them. Right next to them, in a terrifying scene, bodies were being pulled out of the pile of people. Once the scene cleared, police, security, and emergency crews jumped in to help the injured. Ambulance cars rushed in and out of the tunnel, taking the severely wounded to the hospital. On the ramp, with the help of visitors, medics were looking for survivors to provide them with first aid. Most of the injured had fainted due to the inability to breathe in the dense crowd. They had to be revived again. At that time, the party was still going on at the main festival area. However, upon learning what had happened on the main ramp, the organizers chose not to end it, fearing that the emergency evacuation of the site might lead to an even greater tragedy. The disaster at the main ramp resulted in the death of 21 people and more than 500 injured. 15 people died on the spot, while the other 6 later succumbed to injuries. All of the victims died from compressive asphyxia, the mechanical limiting of the lung expansion by compressing the torso that results in loss of breath. Simply put, air was cut off from the body due to outside pressure. Undoubtedly, it was the crowd turbulence that killed them. The question is, what caused the turbulence in the first place? A situation like this rarely happens by itself. Something had to incite it. Crowd turbulence such as the one at the Duisburg Love Parade are almost impossible to control once they start, and it is astounding how easily they can occur. In the event that people have to wait long, not knowing why they are waiting, they may grow impatient and eventually start to push intentionally as they expect progress to be accelerated. The slow inflow of visitors to the main festival area, combined with police cordons, created a jam at the main ramp. Once the crowd became too big, the panic started to spread, and crowd turbulence began. There were many factors that contributed to the disaster, from the city officials who approved the festival to the event organizers and the police responsible for securing the site. Everyone was involved. The first thing that comes to mind is the choice of location. The old freight station as the festival area was relatively small for an event like Love Parade, especially compared to the site used in Berlin. The location was also constrained by both railway tracks and a freeway on both sides. However, the most controversial aspect was the main ramp's limitations, which were intended to welcome all festival goers. Even though the surface area theoretically allowed a steady inflow and outflow, in practice, it was limited by the installed fences, food stands, and police cars. Out of the ramp's total width of 85 feet, the effective width for the passage of visitors was only 36 feet. In addition, neither the tunnel nor the ramp had separate inflow and outflow paths, so people entering and leaving had to go through the same area. One might ask why the organizers and the city authorities decided to use a location with so many safety issues. The probable answer was the Duisburg city authorities' massive desire to organize an attractive event for the European Capital of Culture campaign, especially the mayor. Experts formulated the concerns to the mayor in detail, who left the approval of the Love Parade to its administration because of a private vacation. In response, the administration urged the city to collaborate constructively, and their representative could deny any responsibility if the city approved the festival's location. On July 21st, 3 days before the festival, the building authority yielded under pressure and finally granted the permit. Mayor Adolf Sauerland gave the regulatory approval only a day before the event. Consequently, the Love Parade was organized in a hurry, so a number of things were overlooked. The series of organizing oversights and errors continued on the day of the festival. The delay in the construction works caused the visitors to jam at the entrance at the very beginning of the event, which could have affected the later, more severe jams that led to the disaster. Then there was the issue with the floats. Even though it was planned for them to draw in the visitors arriving from the entrance, in practice, they hindered their movement, thus slowing down the overall inflow into the central area. Eventually, a jam appeared at the main ramp, creating a situation that the event staff could not cope with. Once the police stepped in, it was likely that they were surprised by the sudden need to take control. They made a forced move of creating 3 cordons that not only didn't solve the problem, but made it much worse. When police cordons in the tunnel collapsed, several thousand visitors rushed toward the main ramp, creating a massive crowd. People recognized the staircase as the only possible exit when the situation got critical. Though it resulted in terrible tragedy, their behavior from that point was perfectly reasonable, as they only tried to escape the dangerous situation. It was clear why the visitors and the public were furious with the people responsible for organizing the event. They demanded answers be given why 21 young lives were lost for no reason. The answer they received was more shocking than the tragedy itself. The day after the tragedy, the blame game began between the mayor, the organizer, and the police. The first to strike was the police trade union in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, which accused the organizers of poor preparation for the event and putting material interests before the safety of people. It didn't take long for the organizer to respond. Rainier Schaller, German multimillionaire and owner of a successful chain of fitness studios, deflected responsibility. He claimed the tragedy was triggered by the police's management of the situation, especially the decision to form the cordons, which, after they collapsed, allowed the uncontrolled stream of partygoers toward the main ramp. As for the accusations regarding the organization's oversights, Schaller said all details were approved or specified by the authorities. Defending their position, the police responded that the tragedy in the tunnel and on the Love Parade grounds occurred within the responsibility of the city and the organizer. To quote, the police's area of responsibility ended at the isolation barriers. The accusations against the police were also made by Mayor Sauerland, whom, on the other hand, the public saw as the main culprit for the tragedy. His administration hastened the preparations and pushed building authorities and the fire department to approve the event's organization. Additionally, the city administration completely ignored all concerns expressed by experts regarding the safety of the visitors. After the tragedy, both the Minister of Interior of North Rhine-Westphalia and the opposition within the city parliament called for the mayor's resignation. The mayor believed such an act would mean he did something wrong and was responsible for the death of Love Parade victims. The shadow of guilt hung over the police, the city, and the organizer for more than 5 years while the investigation was ongoing. The public prosecutor's office in Duisburg, leading the investigation, hired a renowned British expert for human compression, Keith Still. In December 2011, he presented his final report about the accident, based on which the prosecutor filed his charges. If those responsible for the organization and securing the event could not agree on who to blame, the court would rule it. And the court ruled it was no one's fault. On March 30, 2016, the district court in Duisburg decided not to proceed with the charges against 10 suspects, 6 from the city of Duisburg and the 4 employees of the Lopavent company. As stated in the court's decision, the prosecution failed to prove evidence of the alleged breaches of duty of care and their causality. Even though the prosecutor filed a complaint and took the case to the higher court, it all ended the same way. In 2019, the remaining 7 accused took the opportunity provided by German laws to have criminal charges against them dropped in exchange for paying a fine. For the rest of the accused, the trial was closed in April of 2020, when it became apparent that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the trial would not be complete before the statute of limitations of 10 years expired at the end of July. According to the court, it turned out that there were no culprits for the disaster. It just came out of nowhere, an insult to justice and, above all else, to the victims' families. Mayor Adolf Sauerland was voted out of office in February 2012 in a special election organized based on citizens' petitions. He left the mayor's seat surprised that the voters had forgotten all the good things he did during his mandate. Rainer Schaller was never investigated. According to the public prosecutor's office, he did not influence what the prosecution considered faulty planning or illegal approval of the love parade. However, he did accept moral responsibility for the disaster and, out of respect for the victims' families, discontinued the parade for the future. Watch this episode next if you found this video interesting. Please add a like and leave a comment if you want to support the channel.